Meanwhile, at the Grants' mansion, Tyler sat in the study, quietly poring over war strategy books. He gave each and every word on the page his undivided attention. Suddenly, there was a series of knocks on the door. "What is it?" Tyler asked without turning his head. "Mr. Grant, the big day has arrived. We should head out," an elderly voice said from outside the door. Tyler set the book down and got to his feet. After straightening his clothes, he opened the door and walked out. An aged servant stood outside the door, waiting for him with his head bowed. "How are the Harmons reacting?" Tyler asked with an indifferent look. "The Harmons haven't started preparing for the wedding yet. Instead, they're throwing a birthday party," the man replied. "Birthday party?" Tyler's mouth twitched. "Is that supposed to put pressure on me? How amusing." "Mr. Grant, should we fetch the bride another day?" the man asked tentatively. "Since the engagement is today, it can't be changed." "We'll follow the schedule as planned," Tyler said coolly. "Also, find me a coffin and bring it straight to the Harmons' home." "A coffin?" The man was momentarily taken aback. "Mr. Grant, what do you want to do with that? Weren't they going to pick up the bride? What did the coffin have to do with it?" "The wedding carriage is to escort the bride, while the coffin is for bodies. If the Harmon family agrees to the marriage, I'll naturally use the carriage. If they don't, then I'll make them lay in the coffin," Tyler said apathetically. Upon hearing that, the man couldn't help but shudder. He knew that his master was always a man of his word. If the Harmon family didn't know what was good for them, they might end up completely destroyed. "Why are you still standing there? Go do as I say." Tyler gave him a sidelong glance. Yes, not daring to hesitate, the man immediately left. "Chimph, you want to play games with me? Well, let's see whether you can hold off my army." Tyler laughed coldly. He didn't mind the Harmons playing tricks, but in the face of absolute power, any while would be for naught. At that moment, the Harmon estate was still bustling with excitement. Looking across the room, distinguished guests filled the seats. It was a gathering of the exalted. The wealthy and powerful exchanged toasts and chatted among themselves. Meanwhile, Dustin sat quietly in a corner, looking like an outsider. In contrast, Gordon, who was sitting at the other table, wouldn't stop greeting people. "Well, if it isn't Mr. Bowles, what a pleasure to see you. Oh, Miss Pickens, you're here too. My father talks a lot about you. Ha ha ha, Mr. Selinsky, what a surprise to run into you here. It must be fate. Let's grab a meal together sometime." Gordon stood, chatting and laughing with all the guests, showcasing his extensive network. "Gordon, was that Mr. Bowles, the famous jewel tycoon?" Zeke couldn't help but ask, curious. "That's right. Mr. Bowles has a net worth of several billions of dollars, and he owns half the jewels in Millsburg. He's a true titan in the industry." Gordon grinned. "No way. Gordon, you're really impressive. How did you get to know people of such high caliber?" Zoe asked with a look of admiration. "Billionaires weren't the kind of people you could meet just anywhere. Not just Mr. Bowles, but Miss Pickens is also no average Joe. She controls a substantial amount of mineral resources. You could say she's made of money. Also, there's Mr. Selinsky. He's the son of an extremely wealthy man. He's got a bright future ahead of him and a lot of power." Gordon introduced each of them giddily, his face glowing with pride. "Gordon, who would have thought you'd been hiding this all along? I have to admit, it's amazing." Zeke gave him a thumbs up. "Exactly. You're probably the most spectacular one out of all of us," Zoe said, buttering him up. As she spoke, she even snuck a glance at Dustin and continued cynically, "Hey, Dustin, did you see that? This is the difference between you and Gordon. Not only is he rich, but he's also well connected. You'll never reach his level in your entire lifetime." "She's right," Zeke added. "Rhys, here's a word of advice. You'd better leave Natasha as soon as possible, or you'd just be humiliating yourself." Dustin wasn't bothered enough to entertain them. He simply minded his own business, sipping at his drink. Yet, his lofty attitude pissed them off even more. "HPMH, weren't you acting all cool earlier? Has the cat got your tongue? That's all you're good for," Zoe said with a cold laugh. To her, it was obvious that Dustin was feeling ashamed of himself. "Let it go. Let him keep some of his dignity, or you'll back him into a corner, Gordon teased with a smile. Dustin was just a brute who knew a move or two, he really didn't think too highly of him. At that moment, Zoe seemed to have noticed something. She pointed at the door and asked, "Hey, who's that? He's really good looking and even has a certain air about him." The others turned their heads to look, and their gazes fell upon a handsome man walking inside, holding a folding fan. A faint smile adorned his face, and he carried an air of grace. Each movement looked effortlessly elegant. Damn! Isn't that Patrick Hill, the son of the Hill family? Who would have thought that he'd show up too? Zeke couldn't help but gape at the sight of the man. Patrick Hill? Isn't that one of the renowned 10 princes of the South Province? Zoe's eyes widened. Yes, that's him. Zeke nodded. That's the top aristocrat of Millsburg. His status is even higher than Dylan's. Ha ha ha, this is great. Who would have thought we'd have the chance to see Mr. Hill here? We've really hit the jackpot today. Zoe's face lit up with excitement. The Hill family was one of the tremendous 3. Their power and influence could overshadow the entire Harmony family from every aspect. Naturally, the son of the Hill family would be of honorable status. Guys, to tell you the truth, I'm pretty friendly with Patrick, Gordon piped up out of the blue. What? You actually know Mr. Hill? Zoe and the others' expressions changed. Of course. We even had a meal and played golf together, Gordon replied proudly. Last year, he had indeed bumped into Patrick at a golf course. However, their interaction had been limited to exchanging greetings, and that was the extent of it. What the hell, Gordon? You're amazing. You actually hit it off with Mr. Hill? Zeke said with envy. It's Gordon, after all. He's friends with everyone and can even get along with the most influential people. Zoe said with a look of excitement. Hearing the two of them praise him, Gordon felt as if he was walking on air. He loved being the center of attention. Look, Mr. Hill is making his way over. Zoe pointed at him joyfully. Gordon, is he here to see you? Well, only Gordon here knows Mr. Hill. Who else could it be? Let's get ready to greet him, Zeke said, getting excited himself. He's actually heading over here. Gordon paused briefly, taken aback. Although they had met each other before, they weren't particularly close. Could his moment of glory before this have refreshed Patrick's memory and kindled the desire to befriend him? The thought filled Gordon with joy. He quickly adjusted his tie and approached Patrick with a bright smile. Mr. Hill, it's been a while, he greeted, extending his hand. Huh? Patrick raised an eyebrow. Who are you? That single sentence turned Gordon to stone on the spot, his smile freezing on his face. Zoe and the others were also stunned and confused. Didn't he say that they were friends? What was going on? Without waiting for a response, Patrick simply brushed past Gordon. Clearly, he had no interest in entertaining them. To everyone's surprise, astonishment, and bewilderment, he approached Dustin and extended his hand with a smile. Dustin, we meet again. I'm really sorry about what happened before. I hope you can let it go.